200,000 more businesses than there had been in 1980. Under his successor, Carlos Salinas, progress was even more pronounced. By 1993, Salinas and his aides had privatized hundreds of state companies, including iron ore mining and steel companies, sugar refineries, and 2 state airlines, worth tens of billions of dollars. Additionally, he privatized the banks and the telephone company. Predictably, the new privately owned companies quickly became vastly more efficient than the state-controlled ones had been, and productivity rose. Salinas campaigned for the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, realizing that free trade would lead to an increased flow of consumer goods with resulting lower prices and higher per capita incomes. Further, the drive toward increased freedom in the economic realm strengthened the movement towards similarly increased freedom in the political arena. In July of 2000, the election of Vicente Fox as president ended 70 years of uninterrupted one-party rule and demonstrated that free elections in Mexico were possible. Although the country has been adversely affected by the recession of the U.S. economy, economic progress has continued. In 2001, for example, the GDP growth rate was still a robust 4.8%, and Mexico's history as a backward and corruption-riddled socialist system was rapidly receding into the past, or at least gradually receding into the past, I should say. When we take a step back, we see that capitalism, historically, capitalism has now been instituted on 3 continents: Europe, North America, Asia, and is beginning to make slow inroads into a 4th, South America. Statism, the system that denies individual rights and subordinates men to the state's power, whether in the form of feudalism, socialism, communism, fascism, etc., has been the historic and remains the current status quo. If historic and contemporaneous political economic systems are viewed as a great laboratory, testing the contrasting effects of freedom and dictatorship, then honest observers now possess abundant evidence on which to base a conclusion. We now have centuries, if not millennia, of evidence on which to base this conclusion. Capitalism, the system of individual rights, has brought increased freedom to men all over the world. In Europe, capitalism ended feudalism, the dictatorship of the aristocracy. In America, the principle of individual rights impelled the British colonists to throw off the rule of the monarchy and establish history's freest nation. And the logic of the country's founding principle led, in less than a century, to the abolition of slavery, a practice that existed everywhere in the world throughout all of history and once still widespread today throughout the non-capitalist world, for instance, in the Islamic countries and in the communist countries. In Japan, under America's influence, a semi-capitalist, vastly freer society replaced the military dictatorship that preceded it. In Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, the freedom of their capitalist or semi-capitalist systems enabled those countries or colonies to become havens for millions of refugees fleeing communist oppression. More broadly, it is to the capitalist nations across the globe that immigrants come, millions of them, both historically and currently, often fleeing political and or religious persecution in their homelands. They come on rafts to the United States from Cuba, try to swim here. By the millions, and for 15 years, the Vietnamese boat people fled for their lives from communism. And today, more than 1.6 million have found freedom, mostly in the West, many in America. Muslims seeking political and religious freedom flee to the Western capitalist nations from all over the Islamic world. And of course, for more than 150 years, America has been the hope and the chosen destination of persecuted peoples from around the globe, including from Ireland, Jews from Eastern Europe, Sicilians oppressed by the 19th century remnants of aristocratic rule, and Chinese and Koreans oppressed by the communists. Finally, the Western capitalist nations, by inflicting military defeat on the fascists and political economic defeat on the communists, and soon defeat on the Islamists as well, have eliminated the scourge of totalitarianism from large parts of the earth, bringing greater freedom to hundreds of millions of human beings in Japan, Germany, Italy, Eastern Europe, and Russia. Capitalism is the system of freedom. Further, people in the Western world generally sense, but often do not understand, that there is a profound correlation in the world between freedom and prosperity. Deeper, they need to realize that political freedom is a necessary condition of economic prosperity. Regarding the empirical correlation between freedom and prosperity, the Heritage Foundation and the Wall Street Journal jointly published an annual survey examining the degree of economic freedom in the world. Its title, very logically, is The Index of Economic Freedom. And the story that the index continues to tell is that the economically freer countries tend to have much higher per capita incomes than the less free countries. The more economic freedom a country has, the highest its per capita income is. Now, the editors organized 155 countries into 4 categories, which are in ascending order: repressed, mostly unfree, mostly free, and free. The repressed nations of the world, including Cuba, Iran, Iraq under Saddam Hussein, North Korea, show an average per capita income around $2,800. Now, don't ask me where they got that figure from. That seems extraordinarily high. I mean, $2,800 is high for Cuba, much less North Korea. The mostly unfree countries, including Russia, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Brazil, possess an average per capita income of approximately the same. That I might believe. But once an economy moves from the mostly unfree category to the mostly free category, per capita income increases 4 times. The mostly free countries, including Japan, Taiwan, Canada, Poland, Sweden, have an average per capita income of greater than $11,000. Additionally, the average per capita income among free countries is, on average, almost double that of the mostly free countries. The free countries, including the United States, Great Britain, Hong Kong, Singapore, show an average per capita income of greater than $21,000. Capitalism is the system of prosperity. It also needs to be pointed out that the unfree nations of the world have per capita incomes as high as $2,800, if they do, which I doubt, for primarily one reason: the enormous aid they receive in various forms from the West, including and especially the diffusion of American technology. Without investments, loan, aid, technical training, and supplies, etc., from the capitalist nations, the unfree countries around the world would subsist in vastly worse misery than they already do. The enormous educational, economic, medical, and cultural benefits that accrue to the Third World from European colonialism constitute but one example. Another is that without massive food shipments from the West, an incalculable number of human beings would starve to death in the endless famines that recur in the unfree countries, from Ethiopia to North Korea to Zimbabwe. But the deeper point requires an explanation of this fact. Why is freedom so closely tied to prosperity? And related, why is repression so closely correlated with destitution? Is this no more than a statistical anomaly, a freakish though widespread accident? Or is there some necessary connection between the two pairs of conditions? In practical economic terms, freedom works and statism does not. About that, there can no longer be doubt. But why? In her seminal novel, Atlas Shrugged, and in numerous nonfiction essays, Ayn Rand provides the answer. In the thematic essence of her great novel, she shows 2 things. Well, she shows many things, actually, but several that I want to focus on here. 1, that the mind is man's instrument of survival, and 2, that the mind requires freedom. Now, take these 2 one at a time. 1, every value upon which human life depends is a product of man's reasoning mind. The food that we eat, for example, includes crops which must be grown and livestock which must be domesticated, productive activities which require advances in agricultural science and agricultural technology, which require reason. The houses and the buildings that we occupy have to be have to be built, which requires knowledge of architecture, engineering, mathematics, which use reason. The medicines we use to treat or cure diseases have to be researched and developed, which require knowledge of biological science, which employs reason, et cetera, et cetera. We could go on and on from, in any area you want to look, from the modern industrial methods to the time and labor-saving inventions, from the steam engine to the internet, all of these devices and improvements that so dramatically enhance our lives, every one of them, without exception, is a product of man's reasoning mind. And Ayn Rand's point here, the mind is mankind's survival instrument. It's that which makes possible human survival and prosperity on this earth. 2, but the rational mind looks first and foremost at facts, at nature, at reality, at the objective world. Truth is its sole concern. This is the only consideration that drives its work. The beliefs of society or the commands of a dictator are irrelevant to this sacred quest for knowledge. James Watt, for example, studied the properties of steam. Edison, the facts of electrical